In their drive for world domination, the communists have identified different levels of possible conflict to exploit. Khrushchev speaks of war and peace in the light of what he calls the new means of mass destruction. And what Mr. Khrushchev calls local wars, he also rejects because, as he puts it, they may grow into a thermonuclear war. But Khrushchev recognizes another category, which he calls wars of liberation and popular revolt, but which we prefer to call subversion and covert aggression. It is these wars which Khrushchev says are not only admissible, but inevitable. A free world's answer, tested during a year in Vietnam, is counterinsurgency. At the request of the South Vietnamese government, we are helping peace-loving people learn how to defend themselves. Here, in a remote setting, there is new emphasis on the importance of the individual fighting man, as a teacher as well as a leader. Our troops are here to advise and train the South Vietnamese, but fight only to defend themselves, on assignments which often take them into the midst of a bitter and dangerous struggle. In this conflict, it is harder to find the enemy than to fight him. Reaction time to guerrilla attack has been cut from hours to minutes, with faster air transport and improved communications. South Vietnamese troops round up an enemy who strikes quickly and brutally, who already has assassinated countless civilian leaders, teachers, and other villagers who refuse to join them. The plan to protect those who dwell in thousands of rural villages and towns resulted in the fortifying of approximately 5,000 communities in the first year. During an intensive visit to Southeast Asia, Secretary of Defense Robert S. McNamara sees how the fortified hamlet program is working out. The Home Guard, like the volunteer fire department, is constantly on the alert against brush fire surprise attacks, which flare up whenever Viet Cong raiders are in the vicinity. Bamboo-spiked parapets may seem a primitive barrier, but are effective against night raiders. Offshore, our Navy has trained South Vietnamese Navy junk patrols, which guard internal waterways too. These patrols halt suspicious vessels for search and interrogation. Distinguishing between friend and communist foe is one of the most difficult problems of guerrilla war. Overhead, the U.S. Air Force trains South Vietnamese pilots to supply isolated outposts in a land where roads are all too few. In tactical operations, the experience and support of our Air Force-trained South Vietnamese pilots give confidence and wings to government troops. Air commandos, like their counterparts in the Army and Navy, are trained for special missions. They also act as instructors and advisors. Teamwork and on-the-spot training call for dedication from the man in the field to the top commander, General Paul D. Harkins.
The U.S. effort to our Vietnamese allies is a vast and comprehensive one. It involves political, economic, psychological, and military measures. All of the armed forces of the U.S. play a part.
On this side of the world, less than 90 miles from Florida, we faced another communist challenge, one that caused a world crisis. In the president's own words,
"This government as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island. The purpose of these bases can be none other than to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere. To halt this offensive buildup, a strict quarantine on all offensive military equipment under shipment to Cuba is being initiated. All ships of any kind bound for Cuba, from whatever nation or port, where they're found to contain cargoes of offensive weapons, be turned back.
Secretary of Defense McNamara, announcing the quarantine order, tells the press,
"Those are the instructions we've been given. Those are the instructions we will carry out."
Soviet Chairman Khrushchev decided to dismantle the bases in Cuba and to remove the offensive weapons. Under Navy surveillance, the missiles that had threatened the U.S. went back where they came from. And later, the Soviet bombers, which the president listed as offensive weapons, also were shipped home from Cuba. In Florida, the commander-in-chief cited Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps units which flew the surveillance missions that revealed the communist missile buildup. Again, high and low-level reconnaissance pilots emphasized individual skill and achievement as they flew these important historic missions. The president also inspected the ground forces massed in Florida, ready for any action required. At Guantanamo Naval Base, the U.S. Marines reinforced the local garrison. Again, the individual fighting man became a symbol to the world of America's determination to deter all communist aggression. Earlier in Asia, because communist attacks in Laos threatened the border of Thailand, the U.S. responded quickly when Thailand called for help. Our 7th Fleet landed combat-ready Marines in Bangkok in our biggest military move in the Far East since the Korean War. Army combat units were flown in by the Air Force to reinforce Army troops already in Thailand on maneuvers. The soldiers moved in along the Thai frontier facing communist-infiltrated Laos. The presence of our military forces at a critical moment was sufficient to deter an open communist aggression against peaceful Thailand. Again, in India, when communist Chinese attacked in aggression reminiscent of Korea, U.S. help was prompt. Here, the Air Force flew in urgently needed arms at the request of India's government. In Asia, ability to deter aggression has been improving steadily through increased cooperation with our allies of SEATO, the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. In the South China Sea, Exercise Sea Devil brought together Navy units from Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan, Thailand, the United Kingdom, and our own 7th Fleet. And the sailors of 6 nations stressed teamwork as well as individual skill.